Donc, dans l'esprit d'Apertus qui est vraiment multilingual, je vais continuer en anglais et c'est pour vous que je vais faire ça. Vraiment, c'est ma 5e langue, donc merci. So thank you, parliamentarians and friends and my colleagues as well for your time. I think that this is a really important thing to share today. And you heard today already that we can make these tools. I think that's very clear. And we can make them well, and we can make them efficient, and we can make them competitive. And today I also want to just share something really important that guides our training of these models, is that we recognize our responsibility that we are actually making tools that are public good, that can be and will be used by people, and we have the responsibility to make them efficient. We have the responsibility to make them competitive, and we have the responsibility to validate them, to make sure that we know that it's our responsibility as a public good to be having public governance. So we need to calibrate our excitement, right, and our skepticism with evidence. And we have to invest just as boldly as we do in the training of these models in their validation and the safety of what we are doing. I'm putting on my doctor's hat today, right? Because this is where our tools are being used in the highest stakes environments. I'm working in collaboration with Swiss-based organizations that are really representing these high stakes in organizations. This is like the International Committee for the Red Cross, Doctors Without Borders, the WHO, and hospitals across Switzerland and the world. We're making these evaluation tools with the Indian Council for Medical Research at the national level in Rwanda and in other countries. And clearly, the question is not, should we consider LLMs to be used in these high-stakes environments? Should we consider them to be used in medicine or in law? That's clearly not the case, because it's not our choice to make. When I am busy asking questions like this to doctors in Switzerland, I already see that over 50% and sometimes 70% of doctors in hospitals in Switzerland use AI on a regular basis to make their decisions and help them. And this is not so far away from what is happening in the US. People are using these tools already, right? So we don't have a choice of whether we want to use them. The question is rather, is it possible to validate them appropriately? Is it possible to calibrate our enthusiasm with evidence? Is it possible to use them with vigilance and security? And how can we make sure that we recognize our own responsibility to get these kinds of information in a systematic way? So how does this openness that we're speaking about today with Apertus actually affect this ability for us to validate? Well, the answer, as you can imagine, is a lot. So it's actually impossible for us when we are running our clinical trials, right? Absolutely impossible for us to validate tools that we do not own or control. For instance, when OpenAI updated from GPT-4 to 5, everyone who was validating GPT-4, well, that's finished. You have to restart all over again because you have no idea what they have updated. How do you know if OpenAI hasn't got a little deal with a pharmaceutical company on the side going, well, we're going to make this update, and every time you hear the word depression, just say my drug. This is a known advertising strategy. And if we do not have control or understanding or insight into how models are updated and what data they're updated with, we cannot control the validation of the tools that are being used in these very high-stake environments. So when we are using Apertus, this is a really important concern, and it's a concern that is shared by the people who are using the tools. And we have a responsibility to include them in the development of these tools, and we make tools to do that for them. So here is one of them. We take any kind of open model, and we can only do this with open models, and especially now with Apertus, to make tools that can be used in medicine and other high-stakes environments. So this is Meditron, where we can train any kind of model to make medical decisions. And here as well, we can make actually any kind of model. So here we're working with the International Committee for the Red Cross, and this is a use case agnostic. Of course, I'm speaking about medicine because I'm a little bit biased. It's my baby, but we also are making models for international humanitarian law and others. It's not just about validity, though. It's also a very pragmatic concern. When we are able to actually control these models, we gain a huge amount of versatility. We can have models that can be completely offline, and that means that it's actually the sovereignty that you've been hearing about, is that ability to own, the ability to control, the ability to put it on your phone, in your own hospital, for example. And this is what's happening right now in CHUV, in the University Hospital of Lausanne, for example, where they have just bought their own servers to put Meditron on their own premises. And that is what sovereignty is more practically. For us, what's really important, though, what sovereignty brings, especially in these high-stakes environments and with our data, is an important concern of privacy. Confidentiality is something that we really value in medicine, and it's important that we make space for this kind of tool to live. Now, how do these tools normally get evaluated? You saw very impressive results before about benchmarks, and those benchmarks are usually multiple choice questions like this. Now, I don't want to undermine the multiple choice questions. These are hard exams, right? The USMLE, I had to study like many months to get licensed as a a doctor in Switzerland, actually. And they're hard, right? And actually, every single one of these models over here gets over 80% with the medical licensing exam, if they're about the size of 70 billion parameters. And a human doctor, in comparison, gets an average of 60%. Now, what does that mean? How do we really assess these kinds of benchmarks? Does that mean that these models are already better than humans? Maybe it's better for you to ask yourselves, when last have you asked your doctor, well, what did you get in your medical exam, right? The truth is, no one cares, right? Reality is not multiple choice. Our patients don't come to us saying, oh, I have a heartache, and it could be A, B, C, or D, right? This doesn't happen. And so we have to evaluate our models, which costs more money than just asking it random questions. We have to evaluate them in reality and make trials, especially in high-stakes situations. And this kind of investment in large-scale evaluation is essential. Else we are going to fall fallacy to Goodhart's law, which is quite a famous one, that when a measure becomes a target, you end up cheating. It ceases to be a good measure. And we need to make sure that we make more difficult questions that actually represent the complexity of our reality. And this is why we made the MOVE. It stands for massive, and it needs to be massive. Lots of questions to ask. It can answer any kind of question, so we do have to gather the masses. Open, well, it's not open to everyone. It's open only to experts. We don't have some, teenager in Iowa telling us how to titrate, insulin, right? So we open it up to experts, and we have an online validation and evaluation. It is live. There are thousands of experts on our platform across the world, and we are also launching this at national levels in India and Rwanda, and I hope soon in Switzerland. It is a platform that does what it says. It moves models into a new context. And it's a recognition of what Martin and Anna had said before about recognizing that models are at their base imperfect. We will never start with a perfect base, and we have a responsibility, as we have when we are raising children, like was the analogy that was mentioned before. We have a responsibility to teach them, and we are making platforms that can do that. And the MOVE is one such where you can nudge a model until it gets better and better, instead of just retraining the wheel and launching a whole new model. These things cost some money, and we need to treat them like assets and respect the validity that they have, control them, and rather nudge them in the direction that we want them to work, rather than retraining the model from scratch. We need to adapt our models and make sure that we have a standardized, specific, scientifically validated, appropriate protocol for doing so. And this is what we are doing with, for instance, Meditron, where we take Apertus Meditron and we give it to clinicians to nudge experts in a very standardized way so that we can make an adapted Swiss version of that. Our MOVE platform is across 11 countries with over 2,000 experts and around 20,000 questions, about 200,000 evaluations. It's easy. You kind of ask a question that's hard, that maybe covers your own topic, And you want to make sure that you're covering maybe, let's say, fake news or some sort of hypothesis that you think that the model could get wrong. What happens is a very simple process. You get 2 answers, and you don't know which model has answered. It could be ChatGPT, and it could be Meditron, it could be Apertus, right? And now you have the responsibility to, as an expert, with your expertise, go ahead and be careful of fondue. I learned some things, by the way, to see which answer is best. And then critically evaluate and correct that answer. And this information then gets fed back into the model. And that evaluation matrix is important because it is specific to each of the specialties that we are covering. It's a simple website, it's very accessible, and we can onboard people immediately. In CHUV, for example, just here in Switzerland, we had every single service almost of the University of Lausanne participate with over 100 doctors and 2,000 questions, or questions, yes. So with that, we were able to actually make a new model, and then what does that mean? Well, the results are coming in right now, and we're very excited to say that our model is actually much better once it has been nudged in the direction that it's supposed to. Not only is it competitive with other models, and we have a responsibility to compete, but it's also improving over time and allowing us to train these models and actually really teach them in practice, not just on a white paper. So this is actually an open invitation to you, and I'll end out on these slides. The move is actually use case agnostic, and I hope that we can actually get you to rassembler vos collègues, and then poser au chatbot les questions difficiles à votre contexte, and then to evaluate and correct these answers in that systematic way so that you can get your own chatbots. In India and other governments that we're working with, they are helping us organize these expert groups and ensuring that there's a process that they can stamp and validate, not the model, not to approve a model to say, hey, use this model, it's going to really diagnose you well. No one will want to do that. But what people do want to have is a process that they can validate, that they know that the right people are involved and the questions being asked are informed and follow a process. And so I hope that we can get you to join and ensure that we can keep our values, which is the last slide, to ensure, finally, that we really make sure that we have local ownership. And local ownership can really only be through community alignment. When we get our experts to co-create the tools themselves, they feel that ownership and prefer using the tool that they have created and understand and build their own vigilance for how it is working and also how it is not working. We want to make sure that our accountability is maintained and that we have a transparency that is open and that we can participate in. It's important that we recognize that AI it's a new word, kind of buzzword, but it used to be called machine learning, right? And this means it's machine learning. And the ing is really important. And we need to recognize that we are continuing to learn. And this is a dynamic and updatable system. And we have a responsibility to ensure that we keep on nudging it in the right direction, to ensure that we have a representative valuation that can adapt our models appropriately. Thank you.